During the plague years, people feared one thing more than death itself: being buried alive. So some cemeteries began attaching small bells to coffins. If someone woke beneath the ground, they could ring for help. Most people believed the stories were just superstition. But the old gravekeeper of Blackthorn Cemetery knew better. For nearly 40 years, he walked the cemetery alone every night with nothing but a lantern and a shovel. And sometimes, he heard the bells. At first, the sound terrified him. But every single time, it was only the wind. Loose chains, rotting wood, rusty iron moving in the storm. Eventually, he stopped caring. Until one winter night in 1926. The ringing started just after midnight, soft at first. Ding, ding, ding. Not random, not the wind, rhythmic, desperate. The old man followed the sound through the fog until he reached a forgotten grave near the edge of the cemetery. The headstone was cracked almost beyond reading, but one name remained visible. Eleanor Wade. Buried, 1893. The gravekeeper frowned. 33 years dead. Yet the bell above the grave was moving violently, and then he heard it. A woman's voice, weak, broken, barely breathing. "Please help me." The gravekeeper stumbled backward in horror. "Who's there? Please, I can't breathe." His hands trembled as he opened the cemetery records inside his lantern shed. Eleanor Wade, age 26, declared dead from plague fever. Buried October 7th, 1893. No mistake, no recent burial, no explanation. The ringing continued outside. Ding, ding, ding. The gravekeeper returned to the tomb with a shovel. Every instinct told him to run, but the voice sounded real, terrified, human. So he started digging. The deeper he dug, the louder the woman became. "Please hurry. I'm still alive. There's no air." The old man's breathing turned frantic as the coffin lid finally appeared beneath the dirt. Scratches covered the wood. Fresh scratches, as if someone inside had been clawing to escape. The bell rang violently now. Ding, ding, ding. The gravekeeper forced the coffin open and froze. Inside the coffin was himself. His own pale face stared upward through the darkness. His fingernails were torn and bloody. His lantern rested beside the body, broken exactly as it was now. The gravekeeper staggered back in terror, and the ground beneath him collapsed. He fell screaming into darkness. Soil poured over him. The coffin slammed shut, and suddenly, silence. The old man opened his eyes, pitch black, no sky, no lantern, only wood inches from his face. No matter how hard he pushed, the coffin wouldn't move. Then he heard it. Footsteps above the grave, slow, dragging, and somewhere above him, a bell began to ring. Ding, ding, ding. In 1987, an Arctic research team received a distress signal from deep within a frozen sector of the ocean. But the strangest part wasn't the signal itself. It was where it came from. The transmission was coming from the Orpheus, a ship that had vanished in the Arctic ice back in 1921. According to official records, everyone aboard had died. At first, the researchers assumed it was some kind of malfunction, an old transmitter somehow reactivating beneath the ice. But the signal kept repeating, again and again. So the expedition changed course. 3 days later, they found the ship, completely frozen in the ice. But the most terrifying part, the lights were still on. The closer they got, the more wrong the place felt. The ocean around the Orpheus was completely silent. No wind, No cracking ice. Nothing. As if the ship itself was swallowing every sound around it. When the crew boarded, they expected frozen bodies. Instead, they found something worse. It looked as though the crew had vanished only minutes earlier. Hot tea still sat on the tables. Clocks were ticking. Lights flickered softly inside empty cabins. Wet footprints stretched through the corridors, then suddenly stopped in front of locked doors. Later, they discovered the captain's log. Most of the pages were ruined by moisture, but the final entry remained readable. It came from beneath the ice, and the date of the entry matched today's date. That night, the crew began hearing footsteps echoing through the ship. Slow, heavy, but the cameras recorded nothing. One crew member swore he saw people wearing old 1920s uniforms, standing motionless at the ends of the hallways. Then the first person disappeared. They found him the next morning inside the radio room. He was sitting motionless in front of the transmitter, staring into the darkness. And through the speakers, the distress signal was playing again. The same signal. But this time the voice was different. It belonged to one of the expedition members. And that's when they realized the horrifying truth. The distress signal hadn't come from the past. They were the ones who sent it. Several days later. In the year 1348, the plague came to the small town of Ravenhollow. Within months, the streets became graveyards. People died in their homes. Church bells rang without stopping. Bodies were thrown into mass graves because there were too many to bury. Some believed the town itself had been cursed. And then the doctor arrived. No one knew where he came from. He appeared during a violent storm one night, wearing a long black coat and a strange mask with a bird-like beak. He never spoke about his past, never gave his name, but somehow he understood the sickness better than any physician before him. And the most terrifying part, his treatments worked. People who had been hours from death suddenly recovered. Their fevers disappeared. The black marks on their skin faded away. Even the dying began walking again within days. To the people of Ravenhollow, the doctor became a miracle, a messenger sent by God. Every night, long lines formed outside the house where he stayed. But after a while, people began noticing strange things. The doctor never removed his mask, never ate, never slept, and no one had ever seen him enter or leave the town gates. Some swore that late at night they saw him standing alone in the middle of empty streets, completely motionless, as if he wasn't breathing at all. Then the disappearances began. At first, one person vanished, then an entire family, but there was one terrifying detail. Every missing person had been treated by the doctor. Their homes showed no signs of violence, no blood, no struggle, just empty rooms and strange, mud-black dust scattered across the floor. Fear spread through Ravenhollow. People began whispering that the doctor was not curing the plague, but marking people for something else. By then, it was already too late. Half the town had already passed through his hands. So on the night of October 31st, the townspeople gathered together and forced their way into the doctor's home. They smashed down the door. Inside the house was completely empty. No furniture, no medicine, no food. Only hundreds of filthy plague masks scattered across the floor, and standing in the center of the room was the doctor, perfectly still. Slowly he raised his head, and for the first time, he removed his mask. The crowd began screaming, because beneath the mask, there was no face, only darkness, an endless black void inside the hood, as if there had never been anything human there at all. Then suddenly, every candle in the room went out. The entire town was swallowed by darkness, and by morning, the doctor was gone, along with half the population of Raven Hollow. They vanished without a trace, forever. But the most horrifying discovery came days later. Inside every abandoned home, the townspeople found the same thing waiting for them: a black plague doctor mask lying silently in the middle of the floor.